Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
I got a great education at the University of Rhode Island. It's something that I use every day in all of my work. And now the University of Rhode Island, if you haven't heard, they're offering a wide array of programs online. That's right, URI Online. Check it out at uri.edu/online or give them a call, 401-874-5280. I can't thank the University of Rhode Island enough for the outstanding education that they provided me. They're one of the best universities in the Northeast, public or otherwise. Give them a call, 401-874-5280. That's 401-874-5280, and learn about the University of Rhode Island online. Stephen Brown is the executive director of the ACLU of Rhode Island, and coming off of what was, I think, for a lot of people, not necessarily a shocking election, but one that will have reverberations. A conversation today on the sort of guise of national security being used to stifle First Amendment rights. And Steve, this is something that is specified specifically in proposed legislation, but is also just sort of a trend or a theme that we have to be wary of, and that certainly you have your eye on. Thanks for your time today. And what's your initial sort of read on that theme right there, national security, et cetera, as a means to stifle the First Amendment?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for inviting me. This really is an extremely important issue, and one that most people probably don't know anything about. This is sort of an under-the-radar issue. I mean, the first thing I'd say, though, is as bad as this bill is that we'll get into in a minute, it's important to keep in mind that, First Amendment rights have been the subject of stifling by the federal government for a very long time. In terms of national security or terrorism issues, all you have to do is think back to some of the things from 9/11 and some of the overreactions that federal agencies took and are still taking to this day in response to, concerns about national security threats. This new bill, though, is of particular concern to us, especially because of who will be in the presidency starting in January. Somebody who has specifically, explicitly threatened to impose retaliation against political opponents. And this particular legislation provides the perfect, easy opportunity for his administration to do that. So what is the bill? So it has this, wonderful name. It's called the Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. But what it does is it has a provision in it that would give the federal Department of Treasury the power to strip the tax-exempt status from any nonprofit organization that the treasurer decided was somehow supporting terrorism. The vagueness of that term is bad enough, but the procedures that the bill sets out are even more worrying. It's essentially a unilateral decision by the treasurer, the Department of the Treasury. They don't need to provide you the basis, the underlying reasons why they are stripping you of your tax-exempt status. The burden is on the nonprofit agency to then file an appeal while the tax exemption has been revoked in order to try to overturn it. It's just an incredible, just contains an incredible lack of due process. It can be used as a tool of repression against any nonprofit organization that the administration doesn't like. And that's why there are literally hundreds of nonprofit organizations that are opposing the legislation, trying to keep it from getting enacted into law.
It's a dystopian bill, and it really is something. I mean, a lot of people right now are rereading or reading for the first time books like On Tyranny or even 1984, something like that. Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned 9/11. I think back to when I was a freshman at URI. I had a political science professor that was an amazing guy, but he walked in right the day after they announced the terrorism color sheet, the different levels of terrorism, starting with green all the way up to red. And he walked in, and this is one of those big classes with, hundreds of people, and he knocks the podium over and stands there and is like, this is the beginning of the removal of your First Amendment rights and beyond. And watch what happens when somebody decides that this thing is now, we're in the yellow or we're in the orange or the red. This is not the same, but it comes from the same place of, hey, let's control free speech because we don't like it and we think it somehow or another can be, maybe not is even, but can be tied to fear of other people, in this case, terrorism, whatever that means, certainly stemming from some of the protests we saw related to Israel, Gaza. But this is much bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I can't stress enough that it's hard to presume, you'd want to presume good faith in proposing and trying to pass a bill like this, as bad as it is. But again, we have a president who has been very upfront in saying he's going to use his presidential powers to the extent he can get away with it to punish political enemies. And a bill like this is just tailor-made for that type of action. And that's really what makes it so troubling. You can't even accept this as a good faith effort, as misguided as it might be, to deal with legitimate terrorism concerns. This is a direct assault on the First Amendment rights and the right to protest in this country.
It can begin with the nonprofit sector, which can include many universities and certainly those nonprofits that do great work in the community on a daily basis. It can extend, maybe not through this particular proposed legislation, but through future legislation or executive action, into stifling journalists, into stifling artists, dissidents. And that just sets the table for the types of strongmen government that emerged before and after World War II. And it's exactly out of the playbook that so many people fear when they talk about where this country may be heading.
No, that's absolutely right. The potential ramifications of a bill like this are extraordinary in terms of its ability to stifle protest, dissent, reporting by all sorts of people. I mean, the one thing that sort of surprised me, actually, is that that right-wing nonprofits aren't concerned either. I mean, I can certainly see a different precedent saying, gun rights groups, they are supporting terrorism. We need to shut them down. And, these right-wing groups may learn the lesson a little too late if this ends up getting passed. But everybody who's concerned about freedom of speech, who's concerned about allowing nonprofits to do their work without government interference in inappropriate ways, should really be very, very concerned if this bill passes.
What can listeners right now do in terms of trying to encourage representatives and really just anybody that's in the sphere of influence to kind of drill down on opposition here?
Sure. Well, there was a trial vote just a couple days ago in the House. The bill was put up for a vote on an expedited schedule, which required it to get a supermajority of votes, and it failed, even though it got a majority of support, largely from Republican legislators. Our two representatives voted against it. The bill is supposed to come up again as early as today for another vote, and we certainly assume that they will do the same thing, the right thing. But listeners should contact Representative Magaziner and Amo and just thank them for the vote. And then we have to look at our senators and make sure, I feel fairly confident that they too will vote against it, but they need to exercise the power and authority they have to talk with colleagues in the Senate to try to prevent this from passing.
Right. That influential piece may be something critical from a Reid or a White House in terms of dealing with the more moderate, whatever it is left of the more moderate wing of the Republican Party right now. Then there's the other concern that this doesn't pass and in some form or another emerges in the new Congress, either as a standalone or porkified. And it's just sort of, buried in there with funding for a bridge or two here or there, or some other national security type of situations, or funding for foreign nations for their military exercises or actions. So it's something we got to keep our eye on. It's not just going to disappear likely.
No, absolutely. And in fact, they've sort of done something similar now too. This bill, this particular provision was tacked on to another bill dealing with a very innocuous bill dealing with giving hostages in foreign countries the ability to extend their time to pay taxes. It's hard to argue with that, but they threw this on, as a way of, trying to get it passed. And you're absolutely right. We'll certainly see something similar in the new term. And, we just have to keep, expressing our opposition as loudly as we can, urge our federal representatives and senators to do what they can to talk to colleagues. And, if all that fails, the ACLU is ready to go into court and challenge it. There's certainly serious constitutional issues raised by this, but we hope it doesn't get to that.
On a national level, how networked in are you with other ACLU chapters around the country on this? And is there sort of a coordinated plan for looking at constitutional angles, not to give away, show your hand, but do you feel confident that on a national basis, there's unity amongst all of the chapters on this and that it's something that could be overturned in court if need be?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly unity within the ACLU itself about the dangers of this bill. I think more importantly, though, there are literally hundreds of nonprofit organizations that have signed on to a letter that the ACLU put together and submitted to Congress, all raising these issues. So it's not just the ACLU. There's just a wide array of nonprofit organizations, as well as, Philanthropy Council, national groups that represent nonprofits that have come out expressing their opposition to it. But this is the long game. We may be successful before the new Congress starts in defeating this, but as you said, this will be back, and we need to keep up the pressure.
Stephen Brown, ACLU of Rhode Island Executive Director, thanks for keeping your eye on this and for advocating.
Thank you for asking me. Take care.
You want to talk about longevity? Take a look at Navigant Credit Union. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. That's right. Today, Navigant's a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.